Hello, my name is John Bryant. I am an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I am interviewing Alan Howard on February 26, 2009 at the main library. Our camera operator today is Dennis Daly. Mr. Howard, what were you doing prior to you served in the Air Force, and what were you doing prior to your enlistment, and what caused you to choose the Air Force?
Well, I had just graduated from high school in Cleveland, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. It was a school called the Cleveland Colored Consolidated Schools. I came out, I think the year was 1949 or 50, I'm not sure. My brother ahead of me had graduated, and he couldn't figure out what he wanted to do. So when I came out, my whole class, all the boys in my whole class, it was a very small school, senior class. I think it was only 7 or 8 boys in the class. And we all marched down to the enlistment station, and my brother went with me. He was carrying my bags because he had sat around for a whole year and didn't do anything. So when we got there, he said, God, I don't think I want to go back home. So he joined too.
So both of you joined together?
Yeah. So all of us went in together, and from that on, we went to basic training. First we stopped at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And from there that was sort of a processing station in guys coming in. So we were transferred from there to Sheppard Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas, where I completed the basic training. My brother and I remained together doing that basic training. Only one guy in the group, something got wrong with his information, his background, and he fell behind us. He got it corrected, but we would check every once and find out where he was. We found out he was only a couple of stations behind us, But we went through it after the, you can tell me when you want me to stop here, because I'll keep going.
Well, let me stop you just for a second. Coming from Cleveland, Mississippi, you were in a segregated situation.
Yeah.
When you got into the Army or the Air Force, was this your first encounter then with an integrated situation?
Well, now see,
were you aware of it?
And I think about the South, what a lot of people don't realize, the South has a very severe caste system down there. Landowners stick together, white or black. Their income levels sort of stick together. There are some pockets of integration in the South will amaze you. For instance, in our case, my dad owned a little 60-acre farm in the middle of the Mississippi Delta, and adjacent to our farm was a dairy farmer, who was white. We almost lived like one family. You had to it was almost like us against all the elements of nature. If a flood came through and washed out the bridge, whoever got through, go to town, to the little small town if we need supplies. He brought back supplies for everybody. Another good example of how close we worked together, one night the barn caught fire where he kept all the cattle, and everybody had to get up and get the cows out, and the kids and all that, and while the men was shuffling getting all the cows out, the women started a little. We couldn't get a fire department to come way out there. It probably would have been any place to hook up their hoses or anything. But anyway, women, you've seen pictures of them passing the bucket down from the well on it, and we put out the fire. Didn't lose not one cow, and that's something, and that was. Interesting thing I remember about it, we got a day out of school that day. And when we all got all the way done, we all just had a big picnic together, That was the kind of stuff. And then, of course, we played together and the little yellow school bus would come by and pick them up and take them to school, and we'd walk to school.
Walk to school.
You know, it was so we had that kind of integrated relationship in a segregated system. You know. So actually, when I came into service, I didn't, even though I'm coming to probably the most bigoted and segregated state in the Union, I didn't have that feeling of being so separate, you know. So I didn't have any problem mixing with whites and going there. Yeah.
And you were basically not really aware that you were sort of in the forefront of the integration of the military services.
Yeah, you know, I didn't give it a whole lot of thought, and I didn't know it until you just told me. But after I completed my basic training in Sheppard, I had wanted to get in engineering or heavy equipment operation. But, you know, I think that the rule in the military, first you go where they want you to go. The second is you go where they need you. And then third, you may go where you want to go, you know. So I settled for the first one, you know, where they needed me. And they sent me to, actually, I trained in Camp Gordon, Georgia, which was an Army post. Went to the Southeast Signal Corps School, taking the International March Corps, you know. And it was kind of interesting getting into that. I can divert and go into learning a course. Actually, it came to me very easy, and I don't know why. Probably because when you think of the March Corps, you know, you got dots and dashes. Dash, dot, 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 that kind of stuff. First, in the word A is one dot, one dash. But when you start learning it, this is something I figured out in my mind, A is not a dot and a dash, it's da-da, the rhythm of it. And that's how you learn. That's why I came through the school so fast, you know, you learn the rhythm of it. But if you start figuring out, well, how many dots, how many dashes, you're gonna get screwed up. But if you remember the rhythm of it, B is dot, it's not a dash and three dots, dot, and that's where you remember it, you know. And well, I went swoop right through it real fast, you know.
So when you finished your basic training and your schooling, then you got an assignment.
Yeah.
And where were you assigned?
I was had to go to Wheelers Air Force Base in Tripoli, North Africa. And of course I processed up through, first was at Camp Kilmer, another Army base, in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Then from there we went to Springfield, Massachusetts, Westover Air Force Base. Then from there we went overseas.
And this was your first time being outside the United States?
Right, first time outside the United States.
For a young man from Cleveland, Mississippi, what was it like now to be international?
That was really interesting, you know, mixing with the people in that area, the local people, Arabians and Italians. Italians was the money interest and they own other people, but the Arabians, very interesting story here. Just getting in there, you know, you new in town and you get a lot of other duties other than working on your radio assignments, you know. And I think one of my first duties was I had to guard an ammo dump. And it was pitch dark out there. I couldn't see anything. But as I walked, you know, you had to walk around it, you know. And when I walked there up to the fence, I could hear some steps going the other way. I said, now what's going on here? You know? So well, finally, it turned out there was an Arabian soldier on the other side of the fence, and he was wondering the same thing, what's going on. So I could speak a little Italian, and of course he could speak a little English, so we kind of struck up a conversation. We'd walk along the fence and talk. He was on the other side, I was on the other side. And I thought it was very interesting. Later on, when he got out of the service, he became a weather intercept operator. And we were in the same building, communication building. And we became close friends, you know. He'd take me downtown Tripoli. I met all his family and friends. And Through him, I was able to get into Old City of Tripoli, where GIs was not allowed. But I was able to, dress up in the clothes of it. So some of them were Arabian clothes, and I had some of the Arabian features, And I'd walk.
Look a little, yeah.
And I'd go through the Old City. Nobody would, their bicycles were very popular. All you had to do was rent a bicycle and drive right into the Old City. The air police wouldn't even notice me. It was kind of interesting.
So a year's assignment or something like that? How long?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. And we had a ground air operation, and we have air to ground operation. Some part of it was spent ground to air, in a radio station right there, right near the airstrip in the air base. And you had to, the way the system worked, if a plane was leaving Tripoli, Wheelers Air Force Base, going up to, say, Rhein-Main, Germany. And the reason is radio operation was so important, control tower was so important because they travel over a whole lot of water. About almost 75% of the travel was over water. So when they would leave, I would be the primary station. My station would be the primary station. Primary guard station was the term we used. So I'd had to send out messages to all of the other stations along the way and designate a secondary guard station and a third station, which was the final destination. And, we'd send messages about when the plane would leave, what kind of plane it was, how much cargo it was carrying. Most of what they carried was cargo. How high they would be flying, what's the altitude, what's the speed, how many passengers was aboard, and the estimated time of arrival. We're sending that out. And some of the funny things that happen and some of the bad problem, if, for instance, going to, if I designate Rhein-Main, Germany as a secondary station, and they would come in, you called all of them along the line, and Rhein-Main would Roger, so you'd separate, and I'd tell them to wait, and then I'd set up the other. Well, I remember one time, Rome was trying to send a message down, and they couldn't reach me. The plane was coming to Wheelers Air Force Base, so I was the third guard station. So he was trying to set up a secondary station, and he was trying to get Rhein-Main, Germany. Well, Rhein-Main was answering and telling them it's okay, we'll be the guard station. But Rome couldn't hear them. And somehow, I'll tell you, they were so emotional. I would butt in and try to tell them, and he'd tell me, shut up, wait, That was a code signal we used. Let's see, M-M-I-I-M-M. Da-da-da-da-da. 2 dots, 2 dashes, 2 dots, 2 dashes. Let's see, 2 dashes, 2 dots, 2 dashes. It meant you're dumb shit. I know you had to cut that out, but anyway. Rome came in, da-da-da-da-da. To me, shut up and wait, So
how did you respond?
I couldn't do anything. I kept bugging in, and finally, one of the other stations along the line heard what I was trying to do and had to call Rome and settle them down. So we got through that. But I think one of the gorgeous things I remember when I had a chance to take a furlough, I went up and met most all the guys along the line we had talked with, Malta, Castellaneta, Westover, and Rome, Rhein-Main, Germany, Anchorage, Turkey, all up in there. It was kind of fun meeting everybody.
So there was no hint where you were in terms of any kind of military conflict that was actually taking place in Korea. You were fairly well isolated or separated from that.
We didn't even get close to any combat. When I tell the story in the Korean War, I leave it at that. So they think I might have fought, but I didn't do any fight. I remember one time. When you go in, you are assigned a weapon. And you're responsible for keeping the weapon clean. And if anything happened, you were told how to go to the supply sergeant and take your weapon out. One time we got 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, we got a word that there was an uprising among the Arabian people, and they, the rumors were they might take over the base, and we woke all of us up. Half of us was drunk, I think. And we went out and drew our weapons, and we were sitting there, and we look around, everybody with their weapons, half asleep, But that was fun. Nothing happened,
So 2 years in Tripoli.
Mm-hmm.
Then you returned to the United States?
Yep.
And assigned to?
I was assigned to Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
And from Offutt, actually, the command I was in, the Military Air Transportation Service, MATS. So when I went to Offutt, I was in SAC, the Strategic Air Command. And I actually didn't do a whole lot of time in Offutt. I was assigned to an attachment, a MATS attachment outside of Offutt in Elkhorn, Nebraska, where they had all of the communication center there for the whole base. It was located out there.
Now, I'm not sure that this is true, but I sort of remember the Air Force had a distinctive dress uniform that sort of resembled the Greyhound bus drivers. And I think you told me an incident that took place in Georgia, was it?
Yeah, that's true. It was. It looked very much like the bus driver uniforms. And I remember one time coming through Atlanta, Georgia. I was in the airport, and it was crowded. It was Christmas time. Everybody was rushing, trying to get home. And this lady ran up to me panically, and she couldn't find a bus. And she asked me. She thought I was the bus driver. Said, "Can you tell me which track my bus is going to be?" I said, "Ma'am, I'm trying to find my bus too." That was funny.
So you should have been getting closer to your discharge when you were in Omaha.
Yeah.
Another year or so.
Yeah, somewhere along in there. I started preparing myself to enroll into the University of Nebraska. They had a branch in Omaha, but I did one. I got enrolled. I took some 2-year college courses and all that stuff going in.
So why did you choose Omaha? Just because that's where you were located?
Yeah. First I went to Lincoln, and then I was married, had a young family, and traveling back and forth. So I decided to settle down in Omaha with the branch there. It was good. I had a good journalism course there, and.
Now, why did you choose journalism? Did it have anything to do with any work that you had done while you were in the military, or exactly what led you into journalism?
Well, actually, in high school, two of my best subjects was English and math. I might have been better in math, but I was very good in English. So when I got ready to go to school, I went to have an incoming counselor for people coming in, and I went in, and he asked me a lot of questions, said, what you want to, have you decided which field you want to go into? And I said, I'm thinking about engineering. So he said, well, I want to give you a piece of paper and a pencil. I want you to sit in that desk and write to me and tell me why you want to be an engineer. So I went and I sat and I wrote, and then I turned it in. He looked at it and said, hey, this is pretty good. Why don't you go into journalism? I said, okay. And I believe, actually, when I transferred down to Omaha, I was the only black in journalism, so which didn't mind me anymore. But it was a good course. Dr. Paul Peterson, who was the head of the Department of Journalism, ended up teaching at Ohio State for a while.
Now, you went, the GI Bill helped to pay for part of your education and living expenses. How important was that to you?
Oh, thank God. I mean, even though I had, I got the GI Bill, actually, probably, unlike most students who come out of school now, get their degree, they're broke and stuck with a lot of student loans. I came out, I had saved money because I worked at night, while I went to school during the day. So and with the GI Bill, I came out actually It's a little
A little
little
extra
nest
money.
egg, yeah.
So your being a radio operator essentially had no bearing on the field that you ended up going into.
Not really.
But
I kind of talked around and thought about going into radio, but I couldn't make any kind of connections there, so I just kind of gave up on that.
but the GI Bill.
Oh yeah, the
was
GI Bill was a
was
lifesaver for me.
for you.
Oh
Okay.
man, I couldn't have made it without that.
Okay, now we've gotten you through the military and out of the military.
Through school.
Through school. And now you are just graduated with this brand spanking degree. What happened?
Okay, I got another interesting story here now.
Oh, okay.
The day after I graduated, I started work in a YMCA called the North Y as a janitor. Now, the reason I did that, my grandfather on my wife's side had been a janitor there for a long time, and this was considered a good job because this Y was located in the all-white section out there. Well, not, well, it wasn't supposed to be an all-white section, but it was. So we didn't want that job to get out of the family. And I was the only person to keep it for a while. I knew it wouldn't be long until even, my grandfather told me, he said, I want you to go there and keep it until I find someone to replace me. So I went out and I worked, and it was kind of fun. I related to the kids. I even started a ping pong little tournament. A lot of fun working with them. But I think I stayed there, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, stuff like that. I worked on my own. The guy didn't bother me directly. I was used to hard work, and he'd come in, I was cleaning windows and washing windows and shampooing the floor and stuff like that. He'd just come in and speak and say, how you doing? Doing okay. And he'd just leave me alone.
So you were sort of like Booker T. Washington.
I guess I was.
Did it so well that...
So it was kind of fun. I think the best part of working with the kids, so, it's all white kids, and I said, I'd get on them, what are you guys doing? Come on here, come in and play some ping pong when I was older. So they got kind of good, and I kind of set up a little tournament there, and our guys won it. It was good.
Okay, now from Omaha, we go back to Mississippi, I believe.
No, I went to...
Texas.
Yeah.
To Texas.
Texas, yeah.
Now, tell me about Texas.
I got a job with the Houston Informer. That was a black weekly newspaper. The correct political word now is alternative paper, we had our own printing presses, and it actually kind of functioned like a daily newspaper because we put out 2 editions in Houston on Wednesday and Saturday. We put out an edition in Dallas called the Dallas Express, and then we put out one in Beaumont, Texas called the Beaumont News. So our presses was constantly running, and it's pretty close to a daily operation there.
So that had to be a pretty sizable, probably the largest...
Yeah, it was, at that time, it was the largest black weekly newspaper in Southwest Texas, maybe Southwest United States at the time, I think, But how old was I? 25, 26, somewhere along there. I had 63 people under me, and they gave me hell. This little young whippersnapper coming down here. But it was fun working with him.
25-year-old just...
what does he know?
In the military, it's the equivalent of being a second lieutenant,
No.
fresh out of ROTC or something. So, stayed there for a few years.
I stayed there for, I believe it was maybe 2, and then I got on the ground floor of starting a newspaper called the Houston Forward Times. Ran across some guys who had some pretty good money. I didn't have a whole lot, but I was sort of like the working owner, and I had 6% interest in the paper, and that was good, hiring a whole new staff and setting up all the operation. And we jumped out the gate real great. You know, I think we won a national award our first year out there in what they call a grassroots category. I can't remember, you know, what it was, but we kind of made an impact on it. We concentrated on really getting out into the black community, getting these on the street, grassroots type stories. Plus, we mixed that in with showing a lot of the social structure of the black community, showing them in the black and white dances and the time and everything. We developed devote 2 or 3 pages to that kind of stuff, and it just really caught on real good. You know, people. It had a good appeal to the adults, showing them in their finery, plus the kids got a chance to see their parents and parents' friends in tuxedos and long gowns and dresses like that. It created to them an image of the social structure being exposed to the public generally. You know.
So now get me from Texas to Ohio.
Okay, from Texas to Ohio. For a short while, I was out of the newspaper business because we had some very serious sickness in the family back in Omaha, so we had to relocate back there. And I went back because part of the time when I was in school, I worked at a VA hospital as a nursing aide. So I went back to the hospital, worked a year there until I reconnect. Let's see, from Omaha, I went to Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, so you're in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And the Cleveland Call.
Cleveland Call Post, yeah.
And exactly what was the Cleveland Call and Post?
It's another weekly newspaper, and again, we had our own printing presses and printed most of the weekly newspapers around Cleveland. The press was running almost every day, and it was very solid financially, you know. And I came in as a reporter photographer, investigative stuff like that, and it was good, interesting work, you know. When the daily newspapers went on a strike, we sort of like I had to carry the load. One of the things you learn to do when there's a strike of newspapers, if you're not on strike, you don't go after their readers. You just try to carry along the ball and be friendly because you don't want to get any anger between the newspapers. So we survived that. And while there, probably one of the most interesting assignments I did, I covered the 1963 March on Washington for our newspaper.
So you were in Washington?
Yeah, Washington, D.C. I was sitting right underneath Martin Luther King on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial when he made that famous speech, I have a dream.
I have a dream.
Yeah.
What did it feel? Of course, you were there in the capacity of a reporter.
Yeah.
But on a personal level, what did you feel being in that mass of humanity?
I think I rode from Cleveland on a bus with a lot of people who some of them had never been out of Cleveland. Some of them lived in that Huff area in Cleveland, had never been downtown Cleveland. I met a woman and she said, this is the first and last big thing I want to do in my life, to go to this march. And you know, I interviewed people all the way to Washington. And to me, I don't know, it may have brought in perspective the real impact of what the civil rights movement was at that, to see that many people, you know, up from that point, you concentrate on Martin Luther King and Black History Month, and you never related to the grassroots people and what it means to them and what they did and how they felt. To hear this woman's stories and stories of so many of the others, you know, how sensitive they felt about the movement and what it meant to them and what it meant to go to Washington. And a big march like that, it was something. It was really something. And to be there when it, you know, to see all of the leaders all the way over the country marching hand to hand down the streets, and then to hear the speaking when they got up there. People like John Lewis, well, of course, Martin Luther King, and many others.
A. Philip
Rosa
Randolph, I
A. Philip
remember.
Randolph. Actually, people don't probably realize, but it was his march.
His
actually.
march.
He had planned it for years.
Let's go back to that just for a second, because A. Philip Randolph had planned a march on Washington in 1941.
Right. Yes, sir, right.
And so the reality, in a sense, took place 22 years later.
Yeah.
But it was actually his both idea and conception and organization, because he had been the president of the
Pullman Porters.
Yeah. So you come back from that and get reassigned to Cincinnati.
Yeah. The call post had a branch here in Cincinnati, and we had one in Columbus, and we had a small office in Dayton, and we were getting ready to set up one in Toledo. As a matter of fact, we were going to have the old man W.O. Walker had visions of setting up a branch in all the 10 largest cities in Ohio, but he never got around to doing that. But that was a beautiful project. So I came here as branch manager for the Cincinnati call post, which was out of the 3-4 editions we put out. The Cincinnati was known as the state edition, and where we got all of the national advertising. You know, the liquor stores, the beer stores, and most of the car brands and stuff like that.
And shortly thereafter, I believe you got involved with politics, going to Washington with...
Well, let's see, there's a little jump between there. I went from the Cincinnati Call Post to the Enquirer.
To the Enquirer.
Cincinnati Enquirer. So I was there 2 years, from 1968 to 1970. Then I got involved. I was.
And then let's go back to 1968 to get this in.
Yeah.
You would have been probably the first African American reporter for the Enquirer.
Yeah. From what I'm told, I'm not sure. I didn't research it or anything. I'm told I was the first one.
I suspect that is probably so. So you were recruited from the
Call Post,
by the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1968.
Yes.
And stayed there for 2 years?
2 years.
2 years. And is that how you made the contact with Senator, because you then become a part of Senator
Robert Taft
Jr.'s administration?
Yeah.
Is that the connection? How did you make the connection there?
Well, let me see and go back, see how I can figure this. Actually, the contact with the Enquirer was made at the dinner at Bob Taft's house. We were out there, and somehow I was in the chow line in front of the city editor for the Enquirer, Bob Harrod. And he asked me, he said, how come you never applied for a job at the Enquirer? I said, yeah, I said, because I got a job, you know. So he said, well, can we have lunch together and talk about it? So I went out and talked with him, and they gave me a pretty interesting arrangement. You know, I told them, I said, this is, the situation I'm involved with at Call Post, I cannot give them a 2-week notice because the way my operation is set up, you know, I was sort of like everything, you know, the editor, the page layout, my reporter, my photographer, and my janitor, and everything. They cut my staff down to a bare minimum. So I said, no way I could just say, give you a 2-week notice and leave them. They said, well, that's fine. He said, if you want to, we got some part-time job, come in and work part-time. Actually, it was full-time. But for almost 6 months, I didn't use my byline because the Call Post didn't want you working for another paper. So I worked there for about 6 months. And then finally they came and said, can we reverse that? You come here full-time and work there part-time. Yeah. So we kind of worked it out. And it was good. I remember, you see another side of people. Brady Black, he sort of reached out over backwards to help me through it. Every day when he'd leave, he'd walk by my desk and said, "How you doing? You're making it okay?" And I said, "I'm doing fine. Doing fine." He'd check on me every day.
Okay, so now we get you to Washington.
Get me to Washington. And most of the time was actually spent in Cincinnati because I ran the office here in Cincinnati. And in and out of Washington every once in a while in the state. But administrative assistant, we had Senator Taft had an office in Cincinnati, Columbus, and Toledo. Around.
And he was a senator from 70 to
70 to
76.
76, yeah.
And then was not reelected.
No, he didn't get reelected.
So what happens to Alan Howard?
Back to the Inquirer.
So you go back to the Inquirer.
Yeah, while we were sitting around and, you know, everybody felt sad and the phone rang and one of the secretary answered the phone. She said, "Alan, it's for you." I said, "Who is it?" She said, "It's a newspaper." I don't want to talk to the newspapers, you know. I'm anti-newspaper now. So I said, she went back online and she said, who's calling? And he said, and she come back and she said, "It's Luke Feck." Luke Feck was the editor of the Inquirer. I said, "Oh, that's different. I'll talk to him." So he came on and he said, "You ready to come back to work?" I said, "Yeah." I went right back to work because but I had to keep my office open until January 22nd when the new Congress is sworn in.
Something like that.
So what I would do, I'd come to work earlier and work until noon, go to lunch, and then the Inquirer put me on a 2 to 11 shift. So I doubled time all the way up to January 22nd.
Okay, now we've got the last
Last
stages
leg
from
of me.
from 76, because between 76 and today, that's a long time.
32 years.
Retired
last year.
After 32 years.
Yeah.
And
Covered just about every beat at the Inquirer, labor, county courts, federal courts, city hall. Then I got a what they call a justice beat, and then I got into community beat. I used to cover all of the 52 communities in Cincinnati. Then I started writing a column. It was on the editorial page, and I won. Let me throw this in. Won this is after Gannett had bought us. I won the best of Gannett. That means you had the best column among, I think we had 85 papers in. It was quite an honor, you know. I won a lot of other awards. I was the chief writer winning the Ohio Newspaper Association Award and won a lot of community awards. And then a lot of awards organizations gave me. My wife keeps telling me, "We got to throw out all this stuff, all these papers. We got to have it in a place to put them."
Two last questions. Quite a journey from Cleveland, Mississippi to retirement. Do you ever stop and think about that? And there was no way that you could envision, I assume, when you were an 18-year-old coming out of high school in a small one-room.
Yeah.
School.
Well, the school I graduated from wasn't one room, but I did go to some one rooms, elementary school, you know, in Marigold, Mississippi. You know, it's kind of interesting out there.
What do you, when you look back over that, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, I never visioned that. I mean, you go and sometimes you plan your journey and you pursue a career, and maybe there's not time to think about pinnacles that you want to achieve or stuff like that. You just get involved with day-to-day work and just going wherever it takes you. You know what I'm saying? Every once in a while you stop and sit back and dream, but most of the time you don't have time for it.
Opportunity finds you,
right?
In a sense, rather than you finding opportunity.
Yeah.
this is then open-ended. What would you like to have been asked, or what would you like to say that I did not ask you? Or that we have not yet talked about?
Oh, you're saying that some things.
Is there something that you would like to?
Well, I guess this gets into if you had to do it over again, would you do the same thing?
Well,
Gets in that sort of like that category.
Yes.
You know, I think about that. A lot of.
Did you ever consider making the military a career?
No, I did not.
You did not.
I enjoyed it, but I think I wanted to get out and do other things. I could very easily have done that, but I'd actually, one of my cousins who went in with me, he made it a career.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of my guys in the high school went in and made it a career. I think we all got out. And my brother got out before I did. He didn't. He served most of his enlistment right there in Amarillo, Texas. He was on when they went up to set up the base there. He was one of the first ones. Anyway, I think I wanted to just kind of when you have this interest in journalism, you know, journalists go all over the country anyway, and having traveled a lot when I was in service, traveling does something to you. It gives you a certain amount of confidence, I think, inner confidence. You know, to be able to tell people, hey, I've been to Rome, I've been to Paris, I've been to Germany. You know, I didn't learn anything, but at least it gives you some confidence to say you were there, you know.
Did you or the others that went in with you sort of see the military as a way up and out?
Oh yeah, that was back especially during peacetime, you know. But it was a lifesaver for me, I have to say it. You know, in our culture, when we grew up, it was almost like inevitable that you do military time. And it was almost, you kind of grew up thinking, well, I'm going to go in and get it over with as soon as I can, you know. And I think most of us grew up thinking that it's something you just had to do. You know, I couldn't imagine anybody in my family protesting going to the war. You know.
Well, Mr. Howard, it has been a distinct pleasure and privilege to have had the opportunity to interview you on behalf of the Public Library of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure to me to sit down and talk with you. You and I go kind of a ways back.
Our paths do parallel themselves in some respects.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm a little younger.
Oh, well, you didn't have to say that, you know. Okay, thank you.